The ongoing chip war is heating up, and it's a spectacle to watch. Trump is putting all his chips on the tech sector. AI and semiconductors are now seen as the United States' future. The stakes have never been higher, as the machines are taking over. When you break down the sequence of events, it's almost absurd. Biden decides to cut off global chip supplies, Trump escalates by cutting even more chips to China, and then China retaliates by banning all U.S. chips from its government-funded data centers. The plot keeps thickening. It's a strange and bewildering turn of events, and I'm honestly at a loss for words. The race to grab Chinese revenue is intensifying, with Trump now trying to orchestrate high-level talks with Beijing to determine whether Nvidia can sell more advanced chips to China. But didn't China already decide to cut off all U.S. chips? It feels like we're stuck in a paradox. If you own Nvidia stock, this is an exciting time. If China agrees to these sales, Nvidia's stock could soar. If not, brace for a painful downturn. This could signal that China has effectively severed its reliance on U.S. chips, a shift that's becoming more apparent as time goes on. Back in September, Huawei committed to ramping up its AI chip production in China, and now Cameron is following suit, planning to triple their AI chip production by next year. They aim to compete with Huawei by delivering 500,000 AI accelerators by 2026, but the real agenda here is to flood China with homegrown AI chips. Whether it's Huawei or Crion, the goal is the same: to make Chinese tech companies reliant on local chips. Much like how Nvidia wants the world to build on its semiconductors, China wants the same. The longer Chinese companies use domestic chips, the more difficult it will be for them to switch to foreign imports down the line. Breaking away from local chips will be costly and incredibly inconvenient. China is also accelerating its chip production for another reason. It allows them to sidestep U.S. sanctions. Huawei and Cameron's chips are manufactured by SMIC, China's counterpart to TSMC, the semiconductor giant based in Taiwan and the U.S. Huawei uses SMIC's facilities to produce its Ascend 910 chips, while Cameron is taking advantage of SMIC's latest 7 nanometers production process. China is firing on all cylinders here. Chip designers, tech firms, and manufacturers are all growing in tandem. If one day TSMC refuses to provide chips to China or other countries, SMIC can step in. It's not a crisis now, but that possibility looms in the future. There's something even more unsettling. Despite operating with low margins, Cameron turned profitable in 2025, a result of both domestic demand and Chinese government subsidies. This financial stability means they can fight on indefinitely with U.S. chip makers who are struggling with their own costs. The entire Chinese chip ecosystem is poised to outlast the U.S. system. China now has so many ways to bypass U.S. sanctions, and it's almost welcoming these challenges. The faster you build your own ecosystem, the more likely you are to succeed. This seems to be the game plan for both China and Russia today. Even now, Chinese tech giants are moving full speed ahead with their AI models, undeterred by sanctions. Despite restrictions, they're still developing their AI models, and they're not slowing down. China is simply adapting by taking their AI development to Southeast Asia, where they're using data centers in countries like Singapore and Malaysia. These moves are fully compliant with U.S. export controls, allowing China to continue progressing in AI development. This is a key area where the U.S. sanctions are failing. On one hand, Chinese AI is advancing, while on the other, the physical chips for AI development are improving too. This is happening at full speed despite the sanctions. Alibaba's Qwen and ByteDance's models are now among the top-performing large language models, LLMs, in the world. Qwen, in particular, is an open-source model used globally by companies and developers. This creates a win-win scenario for nations like Singapore and Malaysia, as Chinese companies lease data center space overseas. Nvidia, on the other hand, can't afford to lose any revenue. They need to justify their high valuation, so the pressure is mounting. Jensen, the CEO of Nvidia, understands the unique advantage China holds. The country has built a robust ecosystem that accelerates both tech innovation and industrial manufacturing, creating a self-reinforcing loop. This is a big reason why the U.S. is struggling to keep up. The U.S. lacks a competitive industrial manufacturing base, which means costs are rising. China, on the other hand, has a well-oiled system that can rapidly build what's needed. In the US, building a data center and launching an AI supercomputer could take 3 years. In China, they can build a hospital in a weekend. The speed of construction and manufacturing is simply unmatched. While the US has the edge in semiconductors, the situation is far from settled. Semiconductor manufacturing is a process, and China has proven time and time again that it can compete. Now, the chip war is only going to become more brutal, and the US is facing its own infrastructure issues. Data centers require enormous amounts of power, not just any power, but cheap, accessible energy. According to Pew Research, data centers in the U.S. are already responsible for 4% of total power demand in 2024, a figure set to double by 2030. This means the U.S. will need nearly 430 terawatt hours of energy for data centers alone by the end of the decade. This puts enormous strain on the energy grid, which is already struggling. To make matters worse, energy prices are rising. U.S. power prices have already increased by nearly 20% in the last 5 years, and that trend is expected to continue. By 2030, the growth of data centers and cryptocurrency mining could push power prices even higher by at least 8%. This will put more pressure on U.S. consumers who are already feeling the strain. The U.S. is attempting to rebuild its industrial base, but without affordable energy, this plan will falter. Here's the challenge. The U.S. will have to pay for this massive infrastructure build-out, and consumers are already feeling the effects through higher prices. People may cut back on spending at stores like Walmart and Target, but they can't stop using electricity. Without power, everything else is irrelevant. And here's where things get truly ugly. With energy costs rising, the U.S. is on the hook to fund its AI war against China. Unless the country can drastically ramp up its energy production overnight, the cost of doing business will keep climbing. How will the U.S. government cover the gap? Will they increase deficits or lower interest rates to allow for more borrowing? Either way, the consequences will be significant. China's energy resources are double the size of the U.S. Despite the U.S. economy being larger, but without energy, how can the U.S. build chip plants, supercomputers, and AI data centers? China's already solved this issue, and the U.S. is playing catch-up. The real concern here is that Trump is betting the entire future of the U.S. economy on AI, hoping to bluff China into backing down. But China has an all-organic pot of money, while Trump is relying on borrowed funds. This is leading to serious consequences for Main Street. U.S. companies big and small are already struggling to access credit, and job cuts are hitting an all-time high. In November, another 71,000 jobs were lost, and nearly 1.2 million jobs have been lost in the last year. This could get even worse in the next 12 months as the focus shifts to AI development. The U.S. economy is hollowing out, and it's heartbreaking. If you have a job, it might not be the best time to take risks. Corporate revenues are under pressure, and companies are not in expansion mode. They're just trying to stay afloat. While the Federal Reserve may cut rates in 2026, that doesn't mean borrowing costs won't spike. Even U.S. treasuries are at risk, as institutions like BlackRock are turning bearish on long-term government bonds. The AI funding wave is coming, but it will cause significant strain on the economy. AI companies need massive amounts of money in a short period, and this could create a funding squeeze. Even Nvidia, the chip giant, could hit a wall. If China turns away from U.S. chips, even more debt will be required to sustain the game. This could be disastrous for the wider economy. Companies will be forced to either lay off workers or cut salaries, and with fewer jobs, spending will drop. This will trigger a cascade of layoffs and a collapse in earnings. The U.S. is heading into a precarious situation with no easy way out. If you're struggling today, it's not your fault. The system is rigged, and even if you're in the AI industry, the road ahead is uncertain. China could always disrupt the whole system, and if that happens, the debt tower will collapse. So brace yourself, because this could get ugly. What do you think? Will China back down and buy more Nvidia chips? Or will the AI funding wave collapse Main Street in the coming years? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, and don't forget to like and subscribe as we navigate these uncertain times.